The day, we're bringing it back home. Scotland is a country that is unfortunately a bit slept on when it comes to filmmaking. When I was a young film bro, the lack of a proper Scottish film scene really confused me. We've got plenty of beautiful open spaces that are always close by at least your basic amenities. And although much of the north especially is still rural and sparse, much of that area does have modernised infrastructure and decent connections to the more isolated locations. As a boy, I saw what a filmmaker like Peter Jackson could do to a country like New Zealand and create one blockbuster franchise that puts that entire country on the map, so to speak, in terms of film. I was always inspired by that and thought that all it would take would be one major film that would depict Scotland, and then boom, we'd have our own major studios pumping out release after release. Obviously today, that's a bit of a pipe dream, and although New Zealand likely has a more profitable and burgeoning film scene than Scotland, the country today has kinda lived in the shadow of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit ever since they came out, and it hasn't really gotten a foothold in more independent and original productions. This is explained in detail in part 3 of Lindsay Ellis's great video series on The Hobbit, and it comes directly from New Zealand's directors and actors. On the other hand, Scotland has never really had any film that we all proudly proclaim represents our country, and especially never had any film that's impacted our nation's image the way Lord of the Rings impacted New Zealand's tourism industry. Now you film bros out there might be pointing to the obvious, what I like to call the big two of Scotland, Braveheart and Trainspotting. You classical film heads out there who like their films like they like their coffee might be screaming whiskey galore or Brigadoon, and if you're more hip and current, you're talking The Wee Man, you're talking I Swear, which is literally just come out, or you're on about the fucking millions of Loch Ness Monster movies that exist, or you might be talking about Christopher Nolan's new Odyssey, which is being shot in parts of the north of Scotland. I've got a mate up there who sent me this photograph of them sailing these big ships into Invergordon's harbour. So you might have proved me wrong there already. There's no lack of Scottish films out there, and you especially might be right that Nolan choosing to film the Odyssey here might be the first signs that Scotland's the new kid on the block when it comes to big budget filmmaking. However, still, to this day, the two films that probably draw the most tourists and are seen the most around the world by non-Scots are the two that I mentioned just then, Braveheart and Trainspotting. Both of these films could probably warrant their very own videos, and maybe will someday, but they each represent two very different sides of Scotland that many people in the country would hold up and say, this is the true Scotland. Let's start with Braveheart. I'm just going to get it out of the way, right? Braveheart is... Let's start with the obvious, right? Where the fuck are all the Scots and what the fuck is that accent on Gibson?
That they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom! The other obvious is how the film is just like historical figure fucking dollhouse with people who I've never met in history now getting involved in fucking love triangles and that. Now you might say just ignore all that and enjoy the film, but how can I enjoy the film when I've got this accent on one of our nation's most important people and the other one is depicted as fucking sloppy seconds Rob who just came in and finished the job once good old Will sorted out them English? How could they do my boy Robert the Bruce like that, man? And fucking Battle of Stirling Bridge. No bridge. What? I'm not the lone Scot by any means that thinks Braveheart is an overproduced and over-emotional soap opera featuring our most beloved historical heroes. To me, it's a load of tripe. It captures none of the actual drama of that time, none of the sense of impending inevitability that most Scots would have felt, no sense of what the English actually want from Scotland. Edward's just a one-dimensional, evil laughing, kill my henchman for no reason dude bad guy. And William Wallace is just a no-nonsense invincible action hero. So for that reason I'm going to move on pretty quickly, because it feels a bit bad to dunk on a film that is essentially our nation's Lord of the Rings on paper. I mean, they genuinely offer Braveheart tours down in Stirling. But as you can tell, I'm no best pleased that this is the film our nation is probably best known for. Although maybe the most famous and the most popular, to me at least, Braveheart is nowhere near the best film in Scotland. What about our next film? Trainspotting is a great film. Can I just say that right away before I kick off? It's great, but It kinda represents the one thing that I hate most about talent in Scotland, and the way the film ends is really just the epitome of what every Scot hates most about all of our actors, or really any celebrity that comes from here. They all fuck off to London at some point. Danny Boyle, the man behind Trainspotting, is English, so there's that for starters. But doesn't the whole film just read as really anti-Scottish to you? Not so much the heroin and the junkie stuff, because that's just fucking real life as far as I'm concerned, but more to the, famous, that famous speech.
Doesn't it make you proud to be Scottish?
It's shite being Scottish! With the lowest of the low! The scum of the fucking earth!
It's no, pal, it's not that bad, come on now. And then, spoilers, renting fucking off to London and starting a better life. Like what? Is that what every Scotsman is destined to do if he wants to be a fucking heroin junkie? I guess the only option is to move to sunny England where everything is sweeter on the other side. Get f***ed with that shite. Trainspotting is great as a standalone film, right? Top notch acting, especially from Robert Carlyle as Begbie. He's my boy, I love Robert Carlyle. One of the most iconic Scottish characters and Scottish actors there is. But when I watch it, I just get a terrible feeling the film really genuinely doesn't like Scotland. And the only option for these dregs is to get out and move to fucking London. Obviously that's not what the film is trying to say, I'm being over dramatic, but that's genuinely why Trainspotting has always left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. That one of Scotland's most popular and famous films, when you really get down to it, reflects a pretty toxic view of the country and the people. Overall, I do like Trainspotting, I love the soundtrack obviously, and it has easily the best non-Scottish Scottish accent ever put on film, with Johnny Lee Miller as Sick Boy.
I got a good price for it. Rents, I need the money.
It was my fucking telly!
Oh Christ, if I'd known you were going to get so humpty about it, I wouldn't have bothered.
I've known lads in Glasgow that dress and speak exactly like Sick Boy. Johnny Lee Miller's accent is spot on, S-tier Scottish accent, the best I have ever heard. I like Trainspotting, I would say I adore Trainspotting, but still, it's no the film I point to when choosing the best film in Scotland. Trainspotting and Braveheart are easily the two films I hear people referencing most when it comes to Scottish films, and to this Scotsman, that is very, very sad, as there's one film that I will always say is the best we've ever done it, and yet not so many people have gone out and seen it. Even here in Scotland, I'm hard pressed to find many people who have went and checked out this masterpiece from 1973 that we're going to talk about today. Many people have heard about this film, probably consumed countless other pieces of media that were inspired by it, and probably know the whole plot without even seeing the film. The Wicker Man, directed by Robin Hardy, although the film is truly the brainchild of the scriptwriter Anthony Schaeffer and the top-billed actor, the late and great Christopher Lee. Schaeffer and Lee met in 1971, and Lee, being a long-time kingpin at Hammer Horror, was interested in acting in a more in-depth and challenging horror role. The two would devise a script loosely based on the David Pinner novel Ritual, in which a devout Christian police officer investigates the ritualised sacrifice of a young girl. Schaeffer would take this concept and structure the story around the many folk songs and tales that surround the Outer Hebrides. Through this process, the film took a shape around the music and the culture of the island, with director Robin Hardy once joking midway through production that the crew were now making a musical. It's funny that, because the film really does weirdly have the structure of a musical, with recurring motifs and introduction songs for specific characters and places.
But I sing of the baggage that we all adore, the landlord's daughter. You'll never love another. Although she's not the kind of girl to take home to your mother.
I'm going to take you through this film in the best way I know how, with clairvoyant stoner powers. For now, if you haven't seen the film, feel welcome to stick around and hear a little bit more about why you should definitely go out and watch it. We're not going to be diving into spoilers just yet, I'll give fair warning like I normally do when we're heading into that territory. So, full disclosure, right? This film is considered one of the scariest films of all time. I mean, it was on the top 100 scariest movie moments after all.
Coming up, which moment turned diaper rash into diaper rage? We're counting down to the scariest movie moment of all time.
doesn't have your serial killer, it doesn't have your ghost, it doesn't have your monster created by man, it doesn't have your strange creature.
Not just that, but many horror writers and directors have cited the film as one of their key influences and one of the scariest films they've ever seen, including the actors involved, with both Christopher Lee and lead actor Edward Woodward proclaiming that The Wicker Man is the best film that they've ever made.
Remarkable film, brilliantly written, and the part was written for me, which doesn't happen very often. Shaffer wrote it for me, personally. I was very happy to be in it. It's a remarkable film, and it's a cult film, still all over the world.
Which, considering Christopher Lee's horror track record, is stellar praise indeed. So, how does one of the scariest films of all time introduce itself? What sinister opening do we have to foreshadow the island of Summerisle?
Corn rigs and barley rigs and corn rigs are bonny. I'll not forget that happy night.
Terrifying. Truly. I'm going to talk more about the music later. Taken out of context like that, it makes for a good cutaway gag, sure, but I hear all the Wicker fans in the audience screaming, Jake, the juxtaposition of the music and the tone is one of the best things about the film, and I'm like, mate, I ken that, I know that, I was about to fucking say that, and now you sound smart and I don't. The Wicker Man is set on the island of Summerisle, which doesn't exist. So they instead had to settle for mainland Scotland. The film was shot mainly on the southwest coast of the country, in Dumfries and Galloway, with some parts also being shot in the West Highlands. This opening scene where Howie lands in Summerisle was shot in the small town of Plockton, about 15 minutes or so shy of the Isle of Skye. Fortunately, one of our liaisons was able to travel to Plockton to show you what it looks like today.
It was upon a Lammas night when corn rigs are bonny. Beneath the moon's unclouded light I held a while to Annie. The time went by with careless heed till 'tween the late and early. With small persuasion she agreed to see me through the barley. Corn rigs and barley rigs and corn rigs are bonny. I'll not forget that happy night among the rigs with Annie.
One really cool detail about the production of this film is that they chose areas where the climate and the environment are particularly affected by the Gulf Stream, which can often allow very unusual tropical vegetation to grow.
What attracted my grandfather to the island, apart from the profuse source of wiry labour that it promised, was the unique combination of volcanic soil and the warm Gulf Stream that surrounded it.
Palm trees in the Highlands of Scotland, I've never seen their like. Now, I don't want to just continuously shower this film with utter praise because, as you can probably tell, I have quite a biased love for this film, so let's try our best here to give a non-partisan, neutral synopsis. The Wicker Man is fucking amazing. The Wicker Man is about police officer Sergeant Howie, who receives a tip about a missing child on the remote Scottish island of Summerisle. He flies out to the island only to be met with unusual behaviour from the locals, especially when questioned about the missing child, Rowan Morrison. It's a very, very simple premise and overall quite a simple mystery on the surface. It's difficult to talk about The Wicker Man without talking about the many films that have been influenced by its specific take on the folk horror genre. A more modern comparison would be the 2019 film Midsommar. I really love Midsommar a lot. To compare it to The Wicker Man, I don't think it's a carbon copy by any means, but you can definitely feel the influence, mainly in the attention to making all the rituals and traditions of the people feel realistic and grounded in actual ancient beliefs. To swing back to my own bias though, here's why The Wicker Man is scarier than Midsommar. Although Midsommar takes great efforts to ground its community in reality and not introduce questionable elements that might harm that, I think there are certain scenes where it goes a bit too far into weird and gory. Like I see all these dead-eyed zombie people during certain moments, and then I see the members performing grotesque actions on their own bodies, and I kind of step out of the film a bit and ask, how do the elders keep convincing generation after generation of young people to do this shit? What makes the Wicker Man stand out to me is how jovial and playful the traditions of Summerisle are, and how much fun and freedom the people of the island have. I don't know if many people can relate to this, but the behaviour of the villagers in the Wicker Man, especially the children during the Maypole dance and the May Day celebrations, they are eerily similar to Easter galas and comic relief sports days that we had in this country. I think this might make it scarier for me alone, because I can understand the appeal of something like that. I didn't take part in Easter marches and Christmas sing-alongs as a kid because I'm a strict Catholic and a devout believer in the Lord. I took part because I wanted to have some fun with my mates. That's why the Wicker Man's world is so much more spine-chilling for me personally. The Wicker Man, unlike Midsummer, doesn't draw its horror necessarily from the sinister and the violent. The true horror of the Wicker Man is how enticing and relatable the life of Summerisle is, and it almost by the end makes you understand why the villagers pay the price they do for this blissful and jovial lifestyle. You may find yourself feeling a bit sick at the end for how much you perhaps envied the people of Summerisle. And when the full mystery unfolds, you can find yourself appalled with your own feelings. It's a type of terror that very few, if any, other horror films can create. I really didn't want to talk about the remake in this video because genuinely it is one of the most incomprehensible messes that has ever been screened. It is a film that truly has to be seen to be believed, and even then I don't recommend you actually watch it. It's not worth it, especially if you like the original as much as I do. There's a lot that this film gets horribly wrong, but one of the many things is how hostile and unappealing the islanders are in the remake. Take a look at these two scenes and the performances of these two actresses and spot the difference.
Wait. When you say that she's grieving, you mean that Rowan is dead?
You would say so, yes.
She's dead or she isn't?
We never use that word here.
No, that'd be too quixotic.
Yes. You see, we believe that after the human life is over, the soul lives on.
You would say so.
Oh, come on. She's either dead or she's not dead.
Here, we do not use the word.
This off-putting and rude shtick is mimicked by all the islanders in this one. It's like they're all written by the same person. It's got that vibe to it. In the first scene on the island, the women we meet literally carry a twitching, bleeding corpse right in front of Nick Cage, the policeman, and nothing happens. It's just a weird jump scare, and they all laugh at him and make fun of him. It just feels like it's trying so hard to be sinister and creepy for the sake of it. Now there's actually a reason all the female characters in the remake talk like such rude and sarcastic people, and it's mainly to do with the director of the film being a big old stinky ball bag, covered excellently in an extensive deep dive into this remake by channel Maggie May Fish. Really highly recommend this video. So to avoid beating a dead woman in a bear costume, beating a dead horse, I'm going to dodge past the Nick Cage remake as quickly as I can, and from now on only use it as a here's how not to do it example when discussing the original. We're fast approaching spoiler territory, so before we get there, I'm just going to go over a few more tidbits on why the original Wicker Man is one of my favourite horror films ever. First off, the music. It takes a bit of getting used to, but it's another aspect of the film that reinforces the jovial tone of Summerisle. The fact that the music is so uplifting, emotional and catchy really expertly juxtaposes the tension of the mystery and the horror of Summerisle in a way that makes the people even easier to sympathise with and relate to. I love how gradually Edward Woodward plays Howie's frustration with the townsfolk. He's a very warm character who at first tries to understand and respect the people of the island. It's again easy to look at how Nick Cage plays him in the remake. He's confrontational and sarcastic and rude from the word go. Probably due to how hostile the townsfolk are to him, but still. He doesn't strike me as a believable policeman at all, compared to Woodward's spot-on Scottish Bobby. I obviously adore Christopher Lee's performance. It wasn't until recently I went back and started watching all the old Hammer horror films, with legendary classic horror actors like Peter Cushing, and of course, Christopher Lee. I've really loved what I've watched so far, but I have to say still, I think Lord Summerisle is the best role which Lee himself ever played.
They are naked.
Naturally, it's much too dangerous to jump through the fire with your clothes on.
Finally, I really enjoy thinking about this film once it's over, as many of the workings of the Summerisle belief system are left a mystery for the viewer even once the film's done. For example, it seems the way in which the villagers offer and tempt Howie suggests that he actually has a choice and a way out during the events of the film to join them and give himself over to Summerisle. It can create a lot of interesting what-if scenarios inside your own head once the film is done. And with that, I'm going to talk about the ending, so here's your big old spoiler warning. I watched The Wicker Man with a small group of friends one time, and I honestly can't really recommend you watch the film this way, as I remember we sat for like 15 minutes in silence, just 1,000 yards staring at our fucking hands once the film was over. I watched another horror film recently that gave me a similar reaction to that, and that was the original 1988 The Vanishing, or Spoilos. Now, I'm going to say nothing at all about this film, as it's one of those films you need to know absolutely nothing about going in. But what made it similar to The Wicker Man for me, if you've seen Spoilos, is that all of its actual horrifying content is reserved for the last like 5 minutes of the film. Unlike Spoilos though, The Wicker Man has an immense feeling of inevitability. I didn't want to say this before the spoiler warning, as I was concerned about blatantly spoiling the whole ending, but The Wicker Man essentially spoils its ending itself with its own title, that the fate of Howie was set from the moment his plane touched down, and there were no words, nor prayers, nor songs that could have saved him. The Wicker Man was inevitable. The whole scene is just incredibly well shot as well, from the snap zoom on Howie showing his reaction to the first sight of the Wicker Man, to the amazing and now iconic scale comparison shot of Lord Summerisle standing beside the sinister, towering Wicker Man. It's an ending that will stick with you long after the film is done, in the best way possible. Robin Hardy, the director, has since said that he doesn't think Howie's devout Christian beliefs play well to a modern audience. I don't think he's right about this, at least no anymore. The religious aspects of The Wicker Man have always drawn controversy ever since its release, as Lord Summerisle's dialogue especially offers a borderline deconstruction of religious beliefs in general.
To whose glory churches and monasteries have been built on these islands for generations past. Now, sir, what of him?
Well, he's dead. He can't complain. He had his chance, and in modern parlance, blew it.
And the film has an explicit comparative mirror of pagan worship to that of traditional Christian worship. I'm not at all qualified to discuss this aspect of the film, I'll leave that to the fuckers in film school, but I think it's worth mentioning, as I argue with the chef a bit here and say that the religious and spiritual aspects of the film are just as challenging today as they were in 1973, especially to a lad who grew up attending Catholic school in Scotland. So that is my review of one of the finest films ever made. I used to think I was preaching to the choir a bit when I glazed The Wicker Man, that it was a film that every single person had seen and loved, but at least on YouTube, I've yet to see a major channel ever really do it justice. The closest would be that Maggie May fish video from earlier. But in her video, Maggie focuses more on the remake and the controversy surrounding that director. Still a very interesting story, but I hope this video can serve as a love letter to the original, a love letter to my country where it was made, and hopefully an invitation for a few of you who will now go out and watch and respect this legendary horror film from 1973. The Wicker Man is the best film in Scotland. Cheers. See you next time.
Corn rigs and barley rigs and corn rigs are bonny.